Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Steve and all this team, amazing team of students putting this together. And I really want to thank John Grimm, my spouse, with whom I teach, and many spouses here, because we wouldn't be here without that kind of support, I think. So tomorrow morning, I have to be in Atlanta and speak to the 100 Climate Foundation funders. And they want to know why our science and our policy have not yet worked in terms of climate change. And this picture that we have here is something that inspires me, actually, that we may be able, not in my lifetime, but hopefully in yours, to move from some of these tenacious problems, they're called wicked problems now, to something of a flourishing Earth community. Now, how can we do this? So science and policy has been at this for a long time, probably 20 years on climate change and the environment. But we're looking for new ways to leverage transformation, finding these acupuncture points of change. And the suggestion here is that ethics or religion, as Alameda spoke about it with Kira, this kind of beautiful hope for a future, that kind of mix can be part of the solution. So religion and ecology, when you hear religion, you may hear the problems, but also hear the promise. Hear spirituality, hear ethics, hear something much larger than just institutions. That's the invitation. Because what I'm going to suggest tonight is that we're scaling up the possibility of not just science and policy, which are necessary but not sufficient, but also ethics, spirituality, what inspires humans in these transformations, and through the field of education and through the force of society itself. So how does this field and force work? This is how we describe this religion and ecology work, which John and I have been doing for over 20 years now with literally hundreds of scholars and activists around the world. And I'm going to suggest that there's two nodes of change that we can mark right now. One is the Climate Change March that happened in September. I hope some of you were there, along with 400,000 others. And that's part of this force for change. But the education and outreach that's also happening is quite remarkable, and I'll tell you what the Jesuits are doing in particular. And then, in the most unlikely thing that could happen in our lifetime, the Pope is going to do an encyclical on the environment, and that's where I will end. So, how did I get into this? I went to Japan very naively after college, and here was Mount Fuji, beautiful, pristine. But over the years, the environmental problems in Japan began to multiply. We know about Fukushima now. But I also went to China 10 years later, and here was southern China, Guilin, beautiful, pristine. And now we know with rapid and relentless modernization, 1 billion people, the amount of pollution, of rivers, of water, of air, Beijing and these cities of 30 million people are not livable. So some of us who are historians of religion, I've studied Asia for 40 years, Confucianism is my specialty, and we've tried to say what would be views of nature, values from these different cultures around the world, environmental ethics that will look different in China or India. And so about 800 scholars over a period of 3 years and then 7 more to do these books. We gathered at Harvard at the, dare I say that, at the Center for the Study of World Religions to investigate the world religions, Western religions, Asian religions, and indigenous religions. And then we began to form this forum on religion and ecology because the excitement was growing. In '98, we had culminating conferences at the UN, and we came here to Yale in 2006. We have a large website on the world's religions and on climate change, the science and the ethics, statements from religious leaders and so on, but also engaged projects on the ground. We have educational programs where, how do you teach this? And workshops on how you teach this. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out to about 10,000 people around the world. We've been working on climate change for 15 years, and what are the ethics and values that religion can contribute? We did this Daedalus volume, which is all online, in 2001. Then we've been working locally in Hartford, here at Yale at the Divinity School, and internationally on conferences and collaborations. Now, that was the background. That was the groundwork, I would say, for 20 years of work with many, many people around the world to say ethics care, compassion, justice matters. What happened in New York in September was an explosion of energy in the direction of this force for change. But in that mix, there were 10,000 people from the religious communities. And as we stood with our students from the Forestry School in Central Park South, facing south, literally from the Hudson River across 58th Street, hundreds and thousands of these religious leaders and community folks came pouring into the line. We had to wait for them to join. That's the leveraging up that we're beginning to see of the religious communities. Now, we know as well the leadership in many of these communities is astonishing. Pope Francis, one of the most popular people on the planet, besides the Dalai Lama, is very much engaged, but so is his friend, who's the Greek Orthodox Patriarch Bartholomew, who's been saying in conferences that we've been going to for 20 years that what we're doing are crimes against creation, ecological sin. He is an amazing person. As is Bishop Katharine Schori of the Episcopal Church here, who just 2 weeks ago said that to deny climate change is actually a moral sin. She's an oceanographer. She's testified before Congress. Joel Hunter is one of the many evangelical leaders. He has a church of 15,000 people who are engaging the evangelical communities on this as well. Now, in the other world religions, especially the ones in Asia that I study, we know the Dalai Lama has been speaking on the environment and climate change for a long, long time. And just last week, as you know, here at Yale, we had the 17th Karmapa, one of the most important leaders of Tibetan Buddhism. I'm wearing this scarf tonight, actually, that he gave us during his visit. And he spoke in Woolsey Hall, 2,500 people, to talk about Buddhism and the environment. He monitors 55 monasteries in the Himalaya region on environmental issues and climate change. So that's the force, the leaders, the grassroots movement, and now we come to education. Just a few weeks ago, I was in Chicago at Loyola University. Now, the Jesuits have the largest private educational system in the world, and the revving up is amazing that's going to happen in the next several years. So at Loyola University, there's a diesel program, Biodiesel. They power several buildings. They have a green building. But what they did was convene 6 of the Jesuit universities in the Midwest to focus on climate change and ethics. And now they're also reaching out to the other Jesuit universities in the US and around the world, 2,500 high schools as well. They're going to put an online textbook, open source, dealing with climate change, biodiversity, food, water, and so on. Now, the global outreach continues because in September, they're going to have a conference of scientists and Jesuits, values, ethics, and ecology at one of the most important think tanks on the environment, the Stockholm Resilience Institute Center in Sweden. And they're going to take this collaboration of scientists and Jesuits around the world to each globe, to each continent, and to insert into their educational system these changes. Now, finally, counter to all expectations, the Pope is going to do this encyclical, which is the highest level of teaching in the Catholic Church. And it's going to come out in the summer, in July, hopefully. We just did a panel a week ago here at Yale on it. What's the content? Well, integral ecology, it's going to be about people and the planet. What is justice for people? What are the ethical challenges of climate change against environmental degradation that is destroying the life systems of the planet? What will happen with future generations? We just had Gru Brundtland at the Forestry School yesterday. She began the whole idea of sustainable development. Remarkable woman. So what her notion was, what is equitable for future generations? This is about climate justice as well. The audience of this encyclical, 1.2 billion Catholics, 2 billion Christians, including Protestants, Orthodox, evangelicals, and so on, and other religious communities. So what are the goals of the Pope? This is a smart man. Short and long-term goals, for sure. He's aiming towards the most important climate talks since 1997, and these are in December in Paris, when the Kyoto Protocol runs out. This will be the Pope's first visit to the U.S. in September. He's going to speak at the opening of the General Assembly. And the most remarkable thing is he's going to speak in the joint houses of Congress. People are looking forward to this. Sheldon Whitehouse, the senator from Rhode Island, just spoke at the Forestry School and said, this is a watershed. This has immense potential for change. So, to conclude, we have this possibility then of the religions of the world coming together as both a field, an academic, educational field, lots of research going on and so on, of theory and praxis, but also a force for climate change, awareness and action, moral force. So that why? Because the cultural values and ethics of the world's communities all over the world come basically from the world's religions. There's 1 billion Muslims, there's 1 billion Hindus, there's 1 billion Confucians. All of this has to be part of these forces for change. We have educational establishments in all of these religions, as well the potential for investment and divestment. The World Council of Churches has already divested from coal and fossil fuels. The UCC, United Church of Christ, has divested. This is moving forward very rapidly. The pension fund of the Episcopal Church here is $2 billion, and they are considering what that might be for leveraging change. Leadership outreach is incredible, as I've suggested. And finally, but maybe most importantly, we have heard some of the most remarkable talks tonight. We've heard about healing of humans. Now we have to think about healing of the earth and human-earth relations in new conjunctions for future generations, because your children and all children depend on that. But it will require resilience such as humans have almost never had to manage, because the sad, bad news is enormous. And so the inspiration that we can derive to go forward against these great odds will come from a whole range of things: religion, spirituality, ethics, and the kiras of this world. And all of you students from whom I get enormous inspiration every day. And I will tell that tomorrow to the climate funders as well. Thank you so very much.